The stadium was alive. 3 suns shone above, casting gold, silver, and red light over the great hollow field. The air shimmered with energy as tens of thousands of voices merged into a single rolling wave of sound. Players darted across the glowing surface of the field, leaving streaks of light behind them with every step. The game, called Skyball, was the pride of the planet Virelia. To play in it was the dream of every child, the measure of every athlete. From the shadowed edge of the stands, Lirana watched it all. Her seat was not really a seat. It was a hover chair, designed to move smoothly without wheels. It made no noise, gliding wherever she willed it to go. But the chair was more than a way to get around. For Lirana, it was a reminder of everything she had lost. She used to be out there on the field, moving faster than the wind, quicker than the ball itself. She had been called the Comet of Virelia, a player whose speed could turn any game. But that was before the accident, the one that happened far above, in the quiet dark of orbit. No one had expected the cargo transport to fail. One moment she had been helping load equipment after a friendly match on one of the orbital stations. The next, alarms were screaming, and a section of the deck collapsed under her feet. She fell hard, and the fall took her legs from her. It was strange, she thought, how quickly life could change. In a single heartbeat, her path had been broken. The doctors on Virelia tried everything. They used their best medicines, the most advanced surgeries. But her injury was to the spinal nerves, and her people's science could not repair them. The verdict was final. Lirana would never walk again. At first, her friends came to visit often. They brought her news of the games, gifts from tournaments, recordings of the most exciting plays. But as the years passed, they stopped coming so much. They still cared, but they had lives to live, matches to play. Slowly, her world became smaller, limited to her home, the streets nearby, and the sidelines of the stadium. She had told herself she was fine with it, that she had accepted her new life. But when she came to the matches and watched the players, watched their legs move like lightning, something in her chest ached. The match today was important. The 2 best teams in the league faced each other, and the air was charged with excitement. The crowd's cheers rose like storms every time a player scored. Lirana found herself leaning forward, her fingers gripping the edge of her hover chair, as if her body still wanted to join in. That was when she noticed him. He was sitting a few rows down, not cheering like the others. His eyes moved from the game to the crowd, scanning as if he was studying something. His hair was dark, his skin pale compared to the bronze tones of most Virelians, and his clothes were simple but clearly not local. She realized he was human, one of the rare visitors from Earth. Virelia did not see many humans. The journey was long, and humans usually came only for trade or research. She wondered what had brought him here to a sports match. Then his gaze met hers. It wasn't a quick glance. He looked straight at her hover chair, at her legs resting motionless beneath, the blanket, and then into her eyes. Most people looked away quickly when they noticed. They didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable. But this human didn't look away. His expression wasn't pity. It wasn't sadness. It was curiosity. Sharp, focused curiosity. For some reason, that made Lirana hold his gaze for a heartbeat longer before she looked back to the field. The game ended in a storm of cheers. The Red Sun team had won by a single point, and players rushed to embrace each other. The crowd began to rise, people calling out for celebrations and after-parties. Lirana stayed seated, waiting for the aisles to clear. Moving her hover chair through a dense crowd was always slow. She didn't notice him approach until he was standing next to her. "Good match?" he asked, his voice carrying the soft but clear accent she had heard from humans before. "It was," she said cautiously. "You came a long way to watch it." I came for something else, he said, then smiled faintly. The match was a bonus. Lyrana frowned. And what was it you came for? He hesitated as if weighing his words. I noticed your chair and I noticed the way you watched the game. That's not the look of someone who just likes the sport. That's the look of someone who used to play. Her chest tightened. That's true, she admitted, but those days are over. They don't have to be, he said simply. She almost laughed. Our doctors tried everything. The damage is permanent. He tilted his head. Permanent for Varelian medicine? Maybe not for human. She blinked at him, caught off guard. What are you saying? I'm an engineer, he said, specialized in neuroregeneration and adaptive exosystems. On Earth, we've developed methods to repair nerve pathways and retrain the body. It's not easy. It takes time. But it works. Lyrana stared at him. She wanted to tell him he didn't understand, that her people had already tried impossible things. But there was something in his eyes, that same curiosity she had seen before, that made her hesitate. What's your name? She asked. Daniel, he said. And I think I can help you walk again. The words felt like a spark, thrown into dry grass, dangerous, bright, impossible, and yet her heart began to beat faster. The stadium had nearly emptied. The bright lights above dimmed slightly, and the sounds of the crowd faded into the distance. Only a few workers were left, cleaning up discarded food wrappers and floating drink cups. Lyrana still sat in her hover chair, trying to decide if she had imagined the words Daniel had spoken. Help her walk again? It was not the kind of thing people said on Virelia. Here, such injuries were accepted as unchangeable truths, like the way the suns rose or the rivers flowed. She looked at him carefully. He was not dressed like a doctor or a scientist. His simple jacket was made from a sturdy dark fabric, and there was a small device hanging from his belt, glowing faintly. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were alive, scanning details, always thinking. You think you can repair my nerves? She asked slowly. I don't think, Daniel replied. I know the technology exists. On Earth, we've been working on it for decades. We've helped soldiers, miners, even deep space pilots who lost movement after injuries. We use neuroregenerative scaffolds, muscle reactivation systems, and adaptive exoskeletons for training. His words were strange to her. Scaffolds and reactivation systems were not things she understood fully, but the way he spoke was calm, certain. Even if you can, she said carefully, you've never worked with my kind before. My body isn't human. That's true, Daniel admitted. Your biology is different, but I've studied the nerve structures of over a dozen species. The basic principle is the same. Nerves send signals, muscles respond. If the path is broken, we build a bridge. Lyrana frowned. You make it sound simple. He smiled a little. It's not simple. It's hard. It hurts. It takes time and it's never guaranteed. But if you want to try, I'm willing to try with you. The air between them felt heavier. Lyrana's fingers tightened on the armrests of her hover chair. She had been told again and again to accept her limits. She had learned to smile politely when people offered false hope. But this man, this human, was not speaking like a dreamer. He was speaking like someone who saw a problem and wanted to solve it. Why? She asked suddenly. Daniel blinked. Why what? Why would you help me? You don't know me. You're not from here. I can't pay you. So why? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned on the railing beside her and looked out at the empty hollow field. On my homeworld, there's a saying, you don't walk past a fallen traveler. If you see someone who can be helped, you help them. That's it, that's the reason. It was such a simple answer, but it landed in her heart like a quiet weight. No hidden deal, No promise of reward. Just help, because help was possible. "You really believe I could walk again?" she asked. "I believe you could run again," he said. For a moment, she felt as though the suns above had grown brighter, but her mind quickly pulled her back to reality. If we try this, where would we do it? The hospitals here won't approve something they don't understand. "I work out of a portable lab," Daniel explained. "It's small, but it has everything I need. I travel with it between systems. I'd need a few days to modify the equipment for your body." The thought of going to a stranger's lab should have worried her. But Daniel didn't feel like a stranger. Something about him. Maybe his calm tone. Maybe the steady way he looked at her, told her he was not playing a game with her hopes. Still, her voice was cautious. "And if it doesn't work? Then you'll be exactly where you are now," he said. "But if it does work, you'll be somewhere you never thought you'd stand again." She turned her gaze back to the hollow field. Even empty, the field was beautiful. Lines of faint light marking the zones, the faint hum of the energy barriers that kept the ball in play. She imagined herself out there, feeling the ground under her feet again, the wind rushing past her face. Her heart beat. "Faster, when do we start?" she asked. Daniel's smile widened slightly, but his voice stayed calm. "Tomorrow, I'll meet you here, same time. We'll move to my lab from there." Lorana nodded, though she still felt like this was a strange dream she might wake from, at any moment. She told herself she wasn't committing to believing it yet. She was just curious. As they left the stadium together, she noticed how easily Daniel matched his pace to her hover chair, never rushing ahead, never slowing her down. He asked about the game, about how skyball was played, about her position when she used to compete. It was strange to talk about those days without feeling pain in the words. Daniel listened closely, not with pity, but with interest, as though her past was a puzzle piece in the work ahead. When they reached the transport station, Daniel stopped. "Tomorrow, then." "Tomorrow," she agreed. She watched him walk away, into the crowd. His steps were sure and unhurried. She wondered if he had always been that confident, or if it came from knowing he could change things other people thought were impossible. That night, Lorana found it hard to sleep. The words repeated in her mind again and again. "I think I can help you walk again. I believe you could run again." They were dangerous words. Hope was a dangerous thing. It could lift you high, but if it broke, the fall could be worse than before. And yet, as she closed her eyes, she realized she was smiling. The next day, the suns rose over Viralia in bands of gold, silver, and red. The city shimmered in their light, its tall crystal towers catching the colors and scattering them across the streets. Lorana moved through those streets in her hover chair, weaving between morning crowds. She told herself she was calm, but her hands gripped the controls tighter than usual. Daniel was waiting at the stadium entrance, just as he had promised. He wore the same dark jacket, but this time he had a small carrying case slung over one shoulder. When he saw her, he smiled briefly. "Ready?" he asked. "I'm here," she said, which was the closest she could get to yes. They left the busy plaza and moved toward the quieter outer docks. Daniel explained that his lab was inside his ship, a mid-size craft docked near the city's edge. Lorana had seen human ships before, but Daniel's looked different, more compact, less polished, but with a sense of purpose in its design. The hull was dark gray, with streaks of blue light running along its edges. Inside, the air was cooler and filled with a faint hum of machinery. The walls were lined with equipment she didn't recognize. Tall frames holding coiled cables, shelves of small containers, and tables scattered with tools. The space was neat, but clearly lived in. A faint scent of metal and ozone lingered in the air. "This is home?" she asked. "Home enough," Daniel said, setting the carrying case on a table I've worked in here for years. Everything I need is here. He guided her hover chair toward a larger platform in the center of the room. It looked like a medical bed, but with mechanical arms folded neatly at its sides and a console nearby. "What's first?" she asked. "First, I scan your nervous system," Daniel explained. "I need to know exactly where the damage is, how much is left intact, and what your body can still respond to." The scan began with a faint vibration under her chair. A frame of thin lights rose around her, moving slowly from head to toe. She felt no pain, just a faint warmth as the light passed over her. While the scan worked, Daniel moved between screens, his eyes narrowing in focus. "Your upper spinal nerves are healthy," he said quietly. "The break is lower, but there's still partial signal activity. That's good. It means the path isn't completely gone." "Partial signal?" she asked. "It's like a bridge, with missing planks," he said. "Some parts are still there, but you can't walk across it safely. My job is to rebuild the missing parts." When the scan ended, Daniel brought out a small device shaped like a narrow band. "This is the first step," he explained. "It's a stimulator. I'll attach it to your legs and spine to test how your muscles respond to electrical signals. If your muscles react, then the scaffolds we build will have a better chance." He worked with calm precision, placing small sensor pads on her skin. The stimulator sent gentle pulses, and to her surprise, her right foot twitched slightly. Lyrana's eyes widened. "I felt that." "That's good," Daniel said with a smile. "It means your body remembers how to listen. We just have to help it speak again." The session continued for hours. Daniel adjusted the stimulator, recorded data, and spoke to her about each step. She asked questions, some about the process, others about him. He told her he had worked on deep space rescue teams before traveling alone. Sometimes his job was repairing machines. Other times it was repairing people. At one point he asked, "Do you trust me?" She hesitated. Trust was a heavy word. "I don't know yet," she admitted honestly, "but I want to." "That's enough for now," Daniel said. "Trust grows as we work." When they finished the tests, Daniel brought out something new, a skeletal frame of thin metal and flexible joints. It looked like a set of legs without skin, light enough to lift with one hand. "This," he said, "is an adaptive exoskeleton. It will move with your body and help guide your muscles as they relearn how to work. Think of it as training wheels." "Training. Wheels for walking," she murmured. "Exactly. But first I have to adjust it for your size and weight." He measured her legs carefully, adjusted the frame's joints, and connected it to a control module. When it was ready, he helped her transfer. From the hover chair to the platform, she felt strange, almost nervous, as the exoskeleton locked gently around her legs and waist. "Don't try to stand on your own yet," Daniel warned. "Let the frame take the weight." At first, the frame lifted her slowly, her feet touching the platform. Her heart pounded. She could feel the pressure through her legs even if her muscles didn't yet obey her will. "Now," Daniel said, "I'm going to guide the movement. Just focus on what you feel." The frame moved her legs forward, one at a time. It was awkward, but she could sense faint signals. Tiny sparks of sensation where there had been nothing for so long. They practiced like this for a while, each step controlled by Daniel through the module. It was tiring, but Lyrana didn't want to stop. Finally, Daniel said, "That's enough for today. You did well." Lyrana sat back in her hover chair, breathing harder than she expected. "It's strange," she said. "I didn't think I'd feel anything." "You'll feel more as we go," Daniel said. "Pain, too. But pain is good. It means the connection is coming back." As she left the ship, the suns were dipping lower, painting the sky with colors that seemed brighter than usual. She realized her mind was buzzing not with doubt, but with something she had not felt in years: hope. For the next several days, Lyrana returned to Daniel's ship every morning. Each session began the same way: scans, adjustments, and then guided steps in the exoskeleton. At first, her movements were stiff and mechanical, but with each passing day, her body responded more. The sparks of sensation in her legs became flashes, and the flashes began to feel like faint currents. Daniel was careful but firm. He encouraged her when she grew tired and reminded her to keep pushing when she wanted to stop. "You're stronger than you think," he told her one afternoon, as she completed a full circuit around the platform without pause. She was starting to believe him. But on the 7th day, something went wrong. It began halfway through the session. Lyrana had been walking in the exoskeleton for nearly 20 minutes when she felt a sudden sharp jolt in her left leg. Not the usual controlled pulse from the stimulators, but something harsher, more chaotic. Her leg twitched violently, and she gasped. "Stop!" she said quickly. Daniel froze the exoskeleton's movement. He crouched down beside her, checking the control panel. "What happened?" "Pain," she said, pressing her hand against her thigh. "Not the good kind. This was wrong." Daniel's brow furrowed. He ran a diagnostic scan, his eyes darting between readings. "The neural scaffold is getting unstable. The filaments are reacting to your biominerals faster than expected. It's overloading the signals." "Is that dangerous?" she asked. "It can be," Daniel admitted. "If the wrong nerves get overstimulated, your muscles could lock or spasm. We have to stop before we do real damage." He removed the exoskeleton, his movements quick but controlled. Lyrana could feel the tension in him even if he tried to hide it. The next morning, she expected him to have a solution, but when she arrived, Daniel was sitting at the console with his head resting in his hands. Several data screens floated in front of him, filled with graphs and streams of numbers. "This isn't just a glitch," he said when she approached. "It's a biology conflict. My tech wasn't designed for Virelian nerve chemistry. Your body is rejecting parts of the scaffolding." Lyrana's stomach sank. "So that's it? We stop?" Daniel shook his head. "No, but I have to rethink the approach. I need something that will stabilize the connection." "Can you do that?" she asked. "I can try," he said, but his voice was quieter than usual. They spent the next 2 days running tests instead of walking. Daniel adjusted the stimulators, swapped out components, and tested different signal strengths. Sometimes her legs responded. Sometimes they didn't. Once her right leg locked so hard that Daniel had to manually release the joint. On the 3rd day of this, Lyrana found herself watching him closely. Normally, Daniel's movements were confident and precise, but now there was a tension in his shoulders, a weight in his eyes. He was still focused, still working, but the quiet moments between his words seemed heavier. That evening, as he finished recalibrating one of the devices, she asked, "Have you ever failed before?" He paused for a moment before answering. "Yes. I've lost people before I could help them. It happens. But I don't like to let it happen." She could see the honesty in his face. This wasn't just about her legs. It was about him, too. He carried the pressure like a hidden load. On the 4th day, things got worse. They were testing a new scaffold pattern when Lyrana's whole lower body seized without warning. A wave of pain shot through her legs, and she cried out. "The exoskeletons!" Alarms flared, and Daniel rushed to shut everything down. "Easy, I've got you," he said, holding her steady as the spasm faded. Her breathing was uneven. "That wasn't good." "No," Daniel said grimly. "That means we can't keep using the current scaffold structure at all. If we push it, the damage could be permanent." Silence settled over the ship. Lyrana stared down at her motionless legs, the hope she had been building in the past week slipping through her fingers. "So we really are stopping," she said quietly. Daniel shook his head. "We're not stopping. We're changing course. But," he hesitated, "the new idea will be riskier." She met his gaze. How risky? I want to integrate a stabilizing element from your own biology, something unique to Varelians. Your bones store crystalline biominerals that conduct energy differently from anything on Earth. If we can shape them into a neural interface, it might make the scaffold fully compatible. And if it doesn't work? She asked. Then the whole system will fail immediately, Daniel said. But it won't hurt you permanently if we shut it down fast. Lyrana leaned back in her chair. The choice should have been easy, to stop, to stay safe. But she remembered how it had felt to take those steps, even with the frame's help. She remembered the way her heart had raced, the air moving around her as she moved forward. She looked him in the eye. Let's do it. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line, but he nodded. All right, I'll need a day to prepare the new interface. That night, Lyrana sat by her window, watching the lights of the city below. The hover chairs moved quietly through the streets, and she knew she could live the rest of her life like this, safe, steady, watching the games from the sidelines. But that wasn't living, not for her. If there was even a small chance to stand again, to run again, she would take it. Somewhere out there, she knew Daniel was in his ship, working through the night, and for the first time since the accident, she wasn't afraid of the risk. The morning came with a thin mist drifting over the city. Lyrana arrived at the dock feeling a mix of fear and determination. She had agreed to Daniel's new plan, but now that the day had arrived, the weight of that choice pressed on her chest. Daniel was already in the ship, working. The center platform was prepared, and on a small table beside it sat something new. A silver and crystal band, delicate yet strong, shaped to curve along her spine. It gleamed faintly in the ship's light. This, Daniel said, gesturing. To it is the new interface. It's made from your own biominerals, refined to match the structure of the neural scaffold. It should allow the signals to pass without rejection. Lyrana studied it. The crystal sections were thin, almost transparent, and the silver edges looked like flowing lines of water frozen in metal. It's beautiful, she admitted. Daniel smiled faintly. Let's hope it works as well as it looks. The first step was to attach the band to her spine. Daniel explained every move before making it, keeping his voice steady and calm. The band locked into place with a soft click, its edges pressing gently against her skin. You might feel a warmth, he said. That's the interface syncing, with your nerve signals. A faint heat began to spread through her lower back. It wasn't painful, but it was strange, like something alive was breathing against her spine. The sensation moved down her legs, almost like invisible hands brushing along her muscles. Daniel watched the readings carefully. Good. No rejection so far. He brought out the exoskeleton, now modified to connect directly with the new interface. The joints had been polished, and several small crystal nodes had been added to the frame. When she was secured in it, Daniel stepped back. All right, let's test the link. The frame lifted her to a standing position. This time, the shift felt smoother, the weight better balanced. A moment later, a pulse of energy moved from the interface into her legs. Her muscles twitched, but not in the chaotic way from before. This was controlled, precise. Take a breath, Daniel said. Now, try to move your right foot forward. She focused. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, her right foot slid ahead, guided by the exoskeleton's support. Her heart leapt. I did that! You did, Daniel confirmed. The frame helped with the balance, but the signal came from you. He guided her through the first few steps. Each time, the movement felt more natural. The warmth in her spine remained steady, and the pain she feared never came. Her left foot moved, then her right, then again, step after step. After 10 minutes, Daniel stopped the frame and looked at her. Do you want to try something? What? She asked. walking without the frame moving you. Her eyes widened. You mean me on my own? The frame will still support you, he said, but the movement will be entirely yours. She swallowed hard. Let's try. Daniel adjusted the controls so the exoskeleton's motors went into standby. The frame still held her steady, but it would no longer push her legs. Whenever you're ready, he said. Lorana stared at the floor. She thought about all the years she had been told it was impossible, all the times she had sat in the stands wishing she could run again. She thought about the sharp pain of the setback days ago, and about Daniel's quiet promise that they could still try. She took a breath and willed her right leg forward. It moved. Her left leg followed, shaky but real. Step by step, she crossed the platform. It was not fast, and it was not graceful, but every movement came from her own will. When she reached the end, she turned to Daniel. Her voice was quiet but filled with wonder. I'm walking. Daniel's smile was small, but his eyes shone. Yes, you are. They practiced for hours, resting between short walks. Each time her control improved. By the end of the day, she could walk a slow circle without Daniel touching the controls at all. When the session ended, she sat back in her hover chair, exhausted but glowing inside. How long before I can walk without the frame? She asked. That depends on your muscles, Daniel said. They've been resting for a long time, but now they'll get stronger every day. She nodded, determination already building. Then we keep going. Over the next week, their work became faster. Daniel increased the resistance on the frame, so her legs had to do more of the effort. He introduced balance exercises, turning drills, and even short bursts of speed. The first time she tried to walk quickly, she stumbled. But the frame caught her before she could fall. By the 8th day of training, she could walk from one end of the platform to the other without the exoskeleton's motors active for most of the distance. That night, as she prepared to leave, Daniel said, I think you're ready for a real test. What kind of test? She asked, walking outside, without the platform. Just you, the frame, and the ground. Her pulse quickened. The thought of being outside, standing among the crowds again, was both thrilling and terrifying, but she nodded. Tomorrow. The next morning, they went to a quiet courtyard near the docks. The stone path was smooth, surrounded by low flowering trees that swayed in the breeze. Daniel helped her stand in the frame. Remember, he said, the frame's still here if you need it, but trust your legs. She took her first step on the stone. It felt different from the platform. More real, more solid. Her second step was surer, her third even more so. By the time she reached the far side of the courtyard, her chest was tight with joy. She turned to Daniel, her voice trembling. This isn't just walking. This is living again. Daniel's smile returned, quiet and proud. Then tomorrow, we'll see how fast you can go. The day of the championship arrived with the city buzzing like a living heartbeat. Skyball fans filled the streets, dressed in the colors of their teams, singing chants that echoed between the crystal towers. 3 suns shone high, painting the air with gold, silver, and red. Lorana had been to many games since her accident, but today was different. She wasn't here to sit in the stands. Today, she would walk, and not just anywhere. She would walk onto the field she had once ruled. Daniel met her outside the stadium, carrying the exoskeleton frame. It was smaller now, lighter, stripped, of many parts. Over the past weeks, her muscles had grown stronger, her balance surer, and her control sharper. The frame now worked only as a safety support, not a crutch. You're ready, Daniel said, his tone steady but warm. Lorana nodded, though her hands trembled. I hope the crowd is ready. Inside, the stadium was a storm of noise. Tens of thousands of fans stood in the glowing stands, banners waving, lights flashing. The teams were already warming up on the field, their movements fast and precise. Lorana watched them for a moment, feeling a mix of nostalgia and excitement. When the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, it caught everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, before today's match begins, we have a special moment. A player who once graced this field returns today, not as a spectator, but as a competitor once more. The crowd murmured, confused at first, until the announcer's next words rang out. Please welcome Lorana of the Silver Comets. The gates opened. Lorana stepped forward. At first, the crowd gasped. Many had heard of her accident. Many had assumed she would never stand again. But here she was, walking across the grass in front of them. Her steps were measured, confident. The exoskeleton frame was almost invisible beneath her uniform, but the people closest to the field could see the faint crystal glimmer along her spine. The sound began as a low ripple, then grew into a wave, cheering, clapping, shouting her name. The entire stadium seemed to rise around her, the air charged with their disbelief turning into pure support. Her old teammates stood frozen for a moment, then broke into wide smiles. One by one, they stepped forward to greet her. The captain clasped her hand tightly. "We've missed you," he said simply. "I've missed this," she replied. Daniel stood at the sidelines, his arms crossed, watching her with quiet pride. This wasn't his moment. It was hers. But seeing her stand where she had once thought she'd never stand again made every long night of work worth it. The referee approached. "You're playing?" Lorana nodded. "If you'll have me." The referee gave a short laugh. "With the crowd like this, I'd be a fool to say no." The whistle blew, and the game began. At first, Lorana stayed near the back, feeling out her movements in the flow of the match. The exoskeleton gave her just enough balance support to keep her steady in sudden turns, but the power in her legs was her own. The ball flashed across the field, players darting in every direction. Then the moment came. A pass was sent too far ahead of her teammate. Without thinking, Lorana sprinted forward. Her legs moved fast, faster than they ever had in training. The wind hit her face. Her heart pounded, and the roar of the crowd rose higher with each stride. She reached the ball before the opposing player, her foot striking it cleanly, sending it soaring to a teammate near the goal. The teammate scored, and the stadium erupted. For a moment, Lorana just stood there breathing hard, her chest filled with something far greater than air. This was it. Not just walking, not just running. This was being alive in the way she had dreamed about for years. The rest of the match was a blur of movement and cheers. Lorana didn't score herself, but she passed, defended, and moved with the team as if she had never been gone. Each step was a reminder that the impossible had happened, and that it had happened because one human refused to accept limits. When the final whistle blew, the Silver Comets had won. But even if they hadn't, Lorana knew the real victory had come the moment she stepped onto the field. After the game, as the teams shook hands, fans pressed toward the barriers to call her name. Many asked how she had done it. She glanced toward Daniel, who was leaning casually against the rail, watching. She walked over to him. "You stayed out of the spotlight," she said. "This was never about me," he replied. "It was about you taking your place again?" She smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Maybe," he said, "but you're the one who decided to try. That's the real reason you're standing here." As the suns began to set, bathing the stadium in shades of gold and crimson, Lorana took one last walk across the empty field. The grass bent softly under her steps, and each one felt like a promise to never take this for granted again. Far above, the lights of ships blinked in the night sky. Somewhere, she knew, there were other people like her, sitting on the sidelines of their own lives, thinking their chances were over, Maybe one day they would meet a human like Daniel, and maybe, just maybe, they would take their first step toward their own field.